5. Inert, 2016. Chapter 1. Inert. Inert. Adjective, having no inherent power of action, motion, or resistance, lacking the ability or strength to move. Oliver went home to die. This is the story of his death. There is folly in chasing ghosts. Ultimately, we grasp and grasp, with every outcome reaching an endless and hopeless result of failing. Nothing is resolved. People often chase reason, whether it is for some self-serving sense of closure or a desperate need for a reasonable answer in an unreasonable world. There are not always answers. We will not always like how things end. For Oliver Blue, when illness took his wife on the 35th year of his life, and the 31st year of hers, he looked to God for answers. As a terminally ill cancer diagnosis soon became a reality in Oliver's life, he started to doubt the reason he was even looking for answers in the first place. At first, the doubt seemed such a meek and innocuous little thing. However, it is the smallest of things that can swiftly eat away at your resilience until it has grown into a whole and all-consuming beast. An infallible doubt now replaced any sense of belief or faith as seemingly endless days of pain followed and, not soon thereafter, Oliver stopped asking his God for answers. Not because he did not want answers, but time and trials had stripped away his belief in a being able to provide them. Oliver became bitter with a life he once loved. Doctors would often say that he was so young, as though tragedy was something befitting of only those lucky enough to live long lives. He was numb to these comments. After all, he knew that there was a great amount of tragedy in the world. However, it had never touched him in such an all-encompassing way. A mysterious illness took his love from this world. A cancer would soon remove him as well. His life, such a small and insignificant thing, young, unremarkable, and so easily finite. Had Oliver had more strength, he would have been angrier. However, even he knew that he could not win a shouting match with the waves of a swift and seemingly endless churning ocean. Oliver went home to die. Overall, it was the better choice than to pass on in the sickly white, overly sterile and uncomfortable hospital room. He had no children, and his parents had both respectively died 2 years prior in a boating accident amongst friends. A caretaker came to his small one-story home, prepared his meals, and made sure that he drank his nutritional drinks. She would often attempt to engage him in small talk. However, sick of his own existence, Oliver would usually remain silent. There was, perhaps, an awkward mutual understanding. Oliver was a lot younger than the average patient that the caretaker was used to engaging with, and he could understand how this could be an obstacle for her. For Oliver, he found that all of her attempts at conversation would do little to pique his interest. He did not care for the weather, the day's events, nor for any formalities. Eventually, the woman would spend her time reading until it was time for her to leave. Oliver found some small amount of comfort in solitude, and he looked forward to her daily departure. Mostly wheelchair-bound, Oliver would stare out the large picture window from his bedroom for hours and watch the sun set across a pine-tree-lined winter scene. His house was rural. It was his parents' home. After their death, he did not even have a moment to redecorate before more tragedy forced its way into his life. They farmed corn and soybeans all around the property. A neighboring farmer bought out the land, but left the house that Oliver would one day call home once more. A few grain silos littered the soft rolling snow-covered hills. A one-lane road existed off in the far distance, though seeing a car or truck pass by was a rare occurrence. A shimmer of snow flashed in the surreal orange glow of the dying light as a gust of wind creaked against the old house. Oliver spent every evening here, motionless. The bed was rarely used. It had not been made in a long time. The sheets lay in a tangled mess, intertwined with an old red and white quilt that had begun to turn gray at its edges. The walls were paneled with dark wood, giving the room a dim, aged feeling. A framed print of a painting of 2 ducks taking flight upon a summer lake hung from the wall above a table that Oliver kept half-full glasses of water upon. Small rings stained the wood in small recessed circles upon its old surface. A stuffed anthropomorphic white and gray cat with gem-like eyes rested against the wall. The cat, named Alice after a real-life pet they once owned, was one of the few possessions that belonged to his wife that hung around the bedroom. The cat, which stood a little over a foot tall, slowly got up to its feet and gingerly stepped past a half-empty cup of water. Alice placed her hands upon the table and vaulted down onto Oliver's lap, where she proceeded to curl up into a ball and yawn. Alice then stretched her long, padded and soft paws up to Oliver's chest and gently pressed her meager weight against the man. Oliver had grown rather thin. His face was wide, bony, with sunken cheeks and sullen dark brown eyes. Illness had made him look significantly older than he was. His brown hair was fraying. Once thick and full, it was thinning and abandoning his scalp like passengers who knew the ship was going down. "Evening, Alice," Oliver said quietly through cracked lips as he ran his tongue against his bottom lip. "Another fine sunset." "Good evening, Oliver," Alice spoke in a soft and gentle feminine voice, one that someone in their right state of mind would find odd. "How was your dinner?" "Shit. Again," Oliver said as he rubbed the stuffed cat behind the ear as Alice began to purr happily. "Then again, I suppose it doesn't really matter. Everything is rather shit these days." "She does what she can. The woman that comes to make sure that you're doing well. Not that you are doing well. You know what I mean." Alice spoke as she nudged her head insistently against Oliver's hand to continue the petting process. "You should make an effort to try and at least talk to her." "What would be the point?" Oliver said as he let out a dissatisfied sigh and picked up a glass of water to soothe his dry and sore throat. "She's no friend of mine. Just here to watch me die, really. Then, when I'm gone, she'll move on to some other poor, sad bastard and burn their waffles every day and make shitty coffee until they die as well." "Well, you aren't dead yet," Alice retorted as she arched her back and kneaded against Oliver's leg until it was a comfortable enough spot to lie upon. "Yet," Oliver said as in a mumble. "That's her real job, though, isn't it? To one day come into that front door, find me dead on the floor, or slumped over in this damned wheelchair. That's all I am to her. A job." "You could see it that way if you wanted to, I suppose. Though if you were to ask me—" "I wouldn't." "I'd say you were afraid of making any form of connection," Alice said as she let out a small sigh and looked intently to Oliver. "What is my job? What am I to you?" "You are me losing my mind." Oliver spoke quickly, then turned his tone to a softer, more consolatory one. "Probably a way for me to deal with everything I'm going through. The only thing keeping me from falling completely apart and into despair. If I'm not at that point already." "I'd like to think I'm something more," Alice said as she nodded and turned her attention back to the window and ran a paw down against the cold surface, tracing a small line against the frosted window. "You know what the worst part is?" Oliver asked, changing the subject and continuing without waiting for an answer. "I'm dying in winter. Is there anything more depressing? I mean, the sun goes down at 5, and then soon after is just darkness." "Yet you continue to stare at the darkness for hours and hours," Alice spoke as she stared out the window. The sun had disappeared completely from the sky, leaving behind a light orange smear across the deep violet sky. "Watching the sunsets I can understand. It's like an ever-changing painting. It's never the same from day to day. But after that, it doesn't change much." "Just getting ready for what is ahead." Oliver spoke as he swallowed hard. "You don't know what happens after you die." Alice spoke as she reached for the windowsill and placed both her paws against the cold glass. "Do you?" Oliver asked as he coughed. "I have theories," Alice said quietly as she watched the orange glow slowly give way to a pale blue. Darkness descended. "I used to believe there was something after all this," Oliver spoke as he watched the stuffed cat sit upon the windowsill. Together they stared into the night, a ritual that had become oddly normal over the past month. Even the conversations were starting to sound about the same. "No, I don't want there to be anything. I don't want to exist anymore. Another life after this just seems like a lot of trouble. More chances for pain and disappointment, honestly." "And what about Olivia? Don't you think she's out there somewhere?" "Don't bring her up," Oliver said sternly as he closed his eyes and looked to the empty, messy bed. "It hurts you to think about her," Alice spoke quietly. She could be waiting for you somewhere. Who knows, right? She's not out there or in some magic cloud land waiting for me. She's gone. Just gone. The doctors, fucking doctors, they couldn't even tell me why she died. There's always a reason, right? Kept asking for answers, didn't get a single one. Well, that is a lie, I suppose. There was always, it was just her time, as though that is any kind of acceptable answer. How am I supposed to come to terms with that? How is it just someone's time at 31? Just because the answer you got was the one you didn't like, Alice said as she traced her paw against the window and followed along a path of stars that formed the Big Dipper, doesn't make it the right answer. And how is it someone's time at 35? It wasn't an answer, though. A real answer contains some amount of science or fact. What they gave me was, at best, dismissive. It was something people say to make themselves feel better when they cannot give you a real answer. At least with me, I can say, yeah, I guess I smoked for a few years, or I drank too much, ate too much red meat, breathed in too much oxygen. Everything causes cancer. It's scientifically proven, Oliver said as he cupped his head into his hands and wiped away a stray tear. Can we talk about something else tonight, please? Sorry, Alice said as she turned to Oliver and her eyes narrowed sadly. She jumped back into Oliver's lap and pressed her soft fur against his face. She caught his tear in her paws and allowed it to pass back and forth from paw to paw until it disappeared beneath her fur. I don't mean to be rude, Oliver said as he rubbed the stuffed cat behind its ear. If it weren't for you, I'd be much more depressed than I am now. Sorry I made you sad. I'm sorry that you are sad, Alice said as she pressed her head against Oliver's. Another gust of wind caused the house to creak loudly. Alice jumped up in surprise as the 2 ducks from the painting flew out of the wall and flitted about the room in a rather panicked manner. Stray, long green feathers flew about in the air. Get back in the painting, Oliver shouted as he remained seated in his wheelchair and flailed his arms. Alice jumped onto the bed as a plume of dust filled the air, causing Oliver to begin to cough. Alice launched herself into the air in an attempt to catch one of the fleeing ducks. Her paws passed harmlessly onto the body of the duck as it darted out of the room as the pair disappeared down into the pitch-black hallway. Alice let out a sigh as she dejectedly made her way back to Oliver's lap. As she approached the window, a small crack appeared on the surface. She traced her finger against the hairline crack. Well, I wonder what got into those 2. Oliver spoke as he shook his head and let out another series of harsh coughs. Something must have spooked them. There's something coming, Alice whispered as she watched the hairline crack grow like the root of a great tree. Soon the entire window filled with the strangely patterned cracks. Water began to trickle into the room from the fractured picture window. Alice? Oliver's voice trembled as the house shuddered violently. The window fell to pieces as a deluge of water swiftly filled the room in a ferocious and deafening roar. The lights flickered on and off a few times before allowing the room to fall into complete darkness. Alice struggled against the quickly moving current as she tried to locate Oliver. In the inky black and coldness of the deluge that had filled the room inside the house, she, unfortunately, could not. She swam her way up in an attempt to find air. The lights flickered on once more. She looked down from high above and saw Oliver still in his wheelchair. He was motionless as though completely frozen in time. A loud crash filled the air as the hull of a small wooden boat breached the ceiling of the rural house. Alice turned just in time to be struck by the errant vessel. She reached her paws up and climbed on board with the last of her strength. Her head dizzy and her wet body weak, she succumbed to darkness as she lost consciousness. Chapter 2. An Ocean Without Reason. If faith can move mountains, then why do people build tunnels? What if people built skyscrapers so that they may be closer to the ones they have lost? It is said that all life comes from the ocean. Is there where we all return when we leave this earth? It took all the water in the sea to cleanse me of my fear of dying. Even then, I did not go peacefully. My lungs burned as the water stole my breath from me. Seconds of pain seemed like an eternity. I could not move. Eventually, after exhaustion, came a strange feeling of simple acceptance. Acceptance did not come easily, though. Nothing in this life ever has. My mind is calm. I can see the wheelchair beneath me as my body gently floats upward in the sunlit sea. A great whale swims in the distance. Its greatness makes me feel small. My place in the world has always been small. My place in this universe has always been even smaller. My place in existence is as small as half a speck of dust in a room so massive I cannot even properly imagine it. So expansive I cannot visualize it, nor will I ever be able to do so. I was, Oliver Blue. Yet, at the same time, I could have been, and am, nothing at all. The duality of my existence and non-existence is not something I understand, nor do I understand how I possess the ability to even recognize it. I have never had a great sense of religion. One could say that I found some vague sense of it when I found love, just as I lost it when I lost love. Some people would tell me that religion is strictly about love, but then I think about all the pain and the war associated with it. I don't think it's necessarily an evil thing by any means. It's just inherently human, flawed just as we are. I've struggled with thoughts, both positive and negative, regarding life, death, and hereafter. I do not believe that questioning beliefs makes me less of a person, just as I neither perceived that following beliefs made me more of one. As I breached the surface of the sea, the remains of my old home surround me. All of my belongings surround me, floating and rolling against the gentle waves. The sun feels warm, a strange contrast to the coldness I felt earlier. A picture in a cracked frame of a young man and woman floats by, and I reach for it. It is a photo of Olivia and myself. I notice my younger, not sickly features and my short, fuller brown hair. It is a relic from another time, another place. Rewind. Lemniscate. Oliver and Olivia. We seemed to fit as well as our names did. I had just turned 26 when I met the 21-year-old Olivia. There are countless stories about how men and women meet, fall in love, and all that progresses thereafter. There will be countless more. Just like in so many stories, and as cliché as it sounds, I felt like I had known her my entire life. Our first meeting was a little over an hour, and I had already felt somehow connected. All thoughts that filled my mind before, though I cannot remember them, dissolved into a beautiful singularity. Her. The more time we spent together over the next few weeks, the weight of her on my mind pushed out all of what seemed important prior to our meeting. It is odd how a moment can change so much of what is going on inside of your head. How that want or need to be in the presence of love can drive you and change the trajectory of your life. Olivia came into my mind like a squirrel chewing its way into a tree, wrecking the place and filling it with nuts. Olivia was beautiful, both then and at the end. I know that I am biased. Everyone in love with someone else inherently is. She often did not find herself attractive, or at least never felt comfortable acknowledging what I considered to be fact. She had light brown hair with a hint of reddish tones that would appear on brilliantly sunny days. She had dark blue eyes, small specks of darkness and light intertwined when the sun would hit them just right. They would impart in me the same feeling as looking at pictures of the earth from high above. A strange sense of awe, an unexplainable feeling. She had high cheekbones. Her bangs were always in her way. She was always brushing her hair away from her face. Her lips were always curled into somewhat of a smile. Even in sadness, she appeared paradoxically happy. She had a small frame, a thin body, signs of a depression and anxiety issue that once caused her to not eat much or very well for the better part of a year, a depression that she then claimed victory over for the time being. She talked very little about the depression that resided inside of her, chalking it up to having a hard first year in college. I never pressed, not in the beginning. For someone who had such a familiar past with depression and the issues associated with it, she was often quick to humor and laughter. I think, above all, that was what attracted me to her most of all. She knew that the world was too much of a crazy place to take seriously. You would wind up completely insane if you let everything bad that happened in life get to you without laughing at some of it. or most of it. Sometimes I think the happiest people in the world are the ones who live under terrible circumstances and are able to laugh at all of it. Every single terrible and sad aspect, both small as an errant insult all the way up to the enormity of the loss of a longtime best friend. Olivia had a gift for singing. However, she never did pursue it. She would sing for fun, parody songs that would come on the radio, or record herself playing an acoustic version of a song. Even with probably too much prodding on my part, she infrequently did much with her skills. She was always fun to talk to. We never bored of each other's company or conversation. Olivia was kind, though wary of people. It was not that she hated or had any ill will towards people. Sometimes she just felt uncomfortable around them. Within the first year of our relationship, on a trip, we found a gray and white cat hanging around a parking lot. There were no houses nearby. The cat was thin and hungry. We took the cat home. I had just started a job at an office barely making minimum wage, and Olivia was looking for something, without much luck. We were living in a tiny one-bedroom apartment on a busy street where pets were not allowed. We brought in the cat anyway, because life is too short without cats becoming part of your daily routine. Olivia named that cat Alice, after a cousin who had committed suicide when Olivia was young. I'm not completely sure why. Perhaps she was attempting to turn a bad memory into something more positive. Alice meant the world to Olivia. Most of the time, I believed that she preferred the cat to 99% of the people she had to interact with in her life, sometimes myself included. We were poor, but happy. I did not understand depression until the end. I wonder how she dealt with it so long. Perhaps she was a stronger person than I was. The air smells like rain. The sounds of cars pass by against the damp street. It is early summer. The large towering clouds have retreated. The late afternoon sun streaks through the lingering wisps left behind from the rainstorm. Olivia is sitting upon a towel against a cheap plastic lawn chair that we found at a garage sale. She is reading a worn copy of John Krakau's Into the Wild. As I step onto the second-floor balcony of our apartment, she looks up to me with those bright, smiling blue eyes. "Hello there," Olivia said as she places the book in her lap and places my hand into her own. "How was work?" "Boring," I replied shortly as I let out a sigh. "But yeah, it really turned into a nice day." "You should quit," Olivia said as she placed a towel upon the chair beside her and patted it down so that I may sit. "We'd be homeless," I said as I chuckled and shook my head. "Hungry, homeless wanderers, just like that hero of yours." "I believe that careers are a 20th century invention, and I do not want one," Olivia said as she attempted to keep a straight face as her lips began to curl into her usual smile. "I thought that was from the movie, not the book," I said as I remembered her very lengthy speech comparison between the two. "You'd know if you read the book," Olivia spoke as she playfully jabbed me in the side with a finger. "I don't really read," I said as I nodded in an almost ashamed state of agreement. "I used to a lot when I was a kid, all the time even. Now I'm just never in the mood or can't find the time." "Well, you'll have to find the time," Olivia spoke as her tone turned serious. "I've decided that I'm going to become an author." "Really?" I said as I paused. "That is great news. Are you working on something now? Or have an idea you're tossing around about what?" "I'm just fucking with you. I applied at the Walgreens down the street earlier today, just front register work, but I figured it would help with the bills." Olivia interrupted with a burst of laughter. "You could write if you wanted to," I said as I shook my head. I knew she was hiding a bit of disappointment. Because she could not find something more fitting of her bachelor's in English degree. "Wait, didn't you just request that I quit my job?" "Yeah," Olivia said as she folded her arms behind her head. "We could just say fuck it, stay around the house all day. It would take a while for them to evict us." "We'd still need to eat," I said as I looked out to the passing traffic. Busy people, busy lives. I wondered how their lives differed from mine. Were they more successful? Did that make them happier? "We could have sex all the time," Olivia spoke as she gave me a very obvious and comical wink. "That makes it more tempting," I said as I allowed a laugh to break my serious mood. I'll let you pee in my butt, Olivia added. Now you've just crossed a very odd line. Evening approached as the traffic calmed down. A warm breeze passed through the buildings. The faint smell of food approached from a restaurant a few blocks away. Alice entered onto the balcony from a small opening that allowed fresh air to fill the apartment. I was always worried that she would fall or jump. She never did. It was just something I worried needlessly over. Instead, she jumped into Olivia's lap as we watched the fireflies dance beneath the streetlights. You really could quit if you wanted to. Olivia spoke as she reached over and held my hand in hers as the evening grew quiet. You could find something that you enjoyed. Well, at least maybe enjoyed a bit more. You could write. I know it's something that you've wanted, I added as I smiled. I stared into those deep blue eyes. They always seemed to have some strange effect upon me. I might when I have something, Olivia said as she noticed my gaze and blushed away. Even after all this time, it still embarrassed her when I stared. Yeah, I mean, it's something I've wanted to do forever, just don't feel like I'm ready yet. You could do what you want to do. You don't just have to be Oliver who works at the office. Didn't you want to be something when you were younger? You never talk about it. I wanted to be an explorer, I said with a short chuckle as I thought for a moment of my childhood. I just wanted to explore the world. Just thought all that amount of freedom would fill me with such happiness. I have this image in my mind of just driving at night through the trees, and I'm headed to new places and new sights. Then, of course, when I grew up, reality set in and realized you can't make a living off that. Reality, Olivia spoke as she gently stroked Alice's fur. It's overrated. My parents. You met them once? Very strict. Military service and all that. When they found out I wanted to become an author, it was kind of like, so you're not signing up right out of high school? Like they had this whole planned life of military service set up for me. Just, they left me out of it. I'm not defending them. I guess it was just what they knew. Maybe the only way they knew. Yeah, it just made things very difficult, Olivia said as she looked saddened for a moment. Anyway, so now what do you want to do? I'll leave soon, find something I like better. I spoke quietly. For right now, I just want to be with you. I know that I probably should have some great plan or great intention of leaving my mark, but I really do not. I just want to be someone you want to be with. That inspires me. That makes me happy. That's sweet, Olivia spoke as she smiled. We have a plan then. After all, we have a young one to take care of. It's a cat, I said with a laugh. Quiet, Olivia objected. I'll be a famous author, and you'll be something great, along with the best love ever. Alice let out a soft meow. Alice. I want to stay here with Olivia forever, in this moment, in the past. However, there are pressing matters at hand, and I have lingered here far too long already, and sadly, for the record, I never left that job. I got a promotion and a pay raise, but I was never happy. Olivia started a book called Free Lives in Transit. Started, but never finished. She never became a great author. I could not even live out my plan of just being there for her, especially in her forced absence. Time took that away from me. As a concept, and as an immovable force, my contempt for time knows no end. If hatred can be endless, then cast mine forever upon time itself, with my full understanding that it will know not my hatred, shouting at the ocean and all that. Forward. Alice! I shout as the framed picture submerges beneath a rolling wave and disappears. Against the sparkling surface of the ocean, I flail against the strong waves until I reach a broken piece of my former roof. With an exhausted body, I heave myself aboard the large floating structure. I take in heavy breaths as I stumble against the rough and cracked makeshift vessel. The salt water is hot against my skin, and the blinding sun is high overhead. I still cannot comprehend the stark difference between the warmth and coldness of the all-too-previous winter. I scan the horizon, past the debris of my former home. All I see is an open, blue, sparkling ocean. The refracting light causes my eyes to narrow. I search the nearby area for Alice. Perhaps she is afloat somewhere nearby. I do not want to be here. Not alone. Alice! I shout once more. I want to understand why I am here. I need someone else, even if it is a sentient stuffed cat, to confirm that I am still here for some unknown reason. By all reasoning of my own mind's comprehension of life and its rules, I should not be. I remember drowning. Am I dead? There should be nothing. Yet there is. Then again, perhaps this is some sort of elaborate hallucination as I lay dying in my bedroom. I imagine my body seizing up on the floor, a frothy mixture of saliva and stomach fluids emerging from my mouth and staining the carpet. I attempt to shake away the unnerving thought. I prefer this reality to what may be the true reality. If I am going to go, or if I am already on my way to whatever end awaits me, I would rather be in this warm place than that sad, cold room bound by my wheelchair. A creeping fear starts to cover me like a cold blanket. I once told Alice I wanted there to be nothing, that I just wanted it all to end. However, now that I have come to what might be the apex of my existence, I start to regret. Though I am fearful, I also feel a sense of anger welling up deep inside of me. If I were just simply gone, I would not be having this newfound anxiety. I would just be nothing. I should be nothing. No memories, no past, and no missing companionship. I do not understand why I have been robbed of my final desire. Have I not suffered enough? How much suffering is ever enough? As if summoned by command, a great whale breaches the water and sprays water upon my body. I get to my unsteady feet and meet eyes with a gigantic creature that floats a few feet away from my makeshift vessel. "What do you want from me?" I ask bitterly. A flock of pure white seagulls land upon the whale's head. The whale does not answer my query. Instead, it stares at me with an unblinking eye. The eye is blue, familiar and human-like. For a moment, my mind flashes to memories of Olivia's eyes. I find myself mesmerized as my mind wants to think of her again, to remember a happy moment, back before things turned bad, back before the events were set in motion that led me to be here now. "Olivia?" I whisper. The whale submerges and disappears. The flock of gulls takes to the air and swiftly closes the distance towards my direction. I duck for cover as I am quickly surrounded by a thick fury of white beast and feather. Forced to the splintered deck of my vessel, I scream out in pain as I feel my flesh torn away by hungry, eager beaks and razor-like claws. I attempt to swat them away with my hands that begin to pull off and stretch beneath the assault. The skin from my fingers is pulled away as I groan in agony. My legs are afire in pain. My chest bursts in excruciating, piercing, sharp jolts from the multitude of injuries. I feel as though the pain will last forever, as I can feel the many beaks clamping down upon my face. I have no hands to shield myself from any further harm. All I can do is endure. Flashes of hot white fill my mind as the assault continues. For what seems like a lifetime, the birds peck away at all of my flesh. Satiated, the gulls finally take their leave of me. The vessel is covered in a thick veil of white feathers. I look down to my former body and find that in its place, I have a new form. My hands are fingerless, glowing yellow forms. My legs are long, yellow, nearly translucent, long U-shapes. My body is like a child's simple drawing of what a person could look like. I reach for my head and find that it is just a globe. My body is just a stretched, circular shape with very little form or definition. As my mind continues to reel from the pain, I cannot come to grips with what has just transpired. I carefully get to my feet, or rather, what used to be my feet. I find that I can still stand. I stagger around for a moment as I attempt to walk in my new form. It takes some getting used to, but for some illogical reason, I can still walk. I can still see. I am still here. I still am. "I do not understand," I whisper. I look at my arm. The strange glowing yellow surface reminds me of one of those microscope pictures of some kind of amoeba from high school science class. Birds just ate my body, I mutter. Now that the pain has subsided, I begin to curse a god that I have already forsaken. I mentioned before that I had never been particularly too religious, but I believed in a god. I went to church as a child, but it never stuck. But I still believed in a god. Now, after all I have been through, including all the events after losing Olivia, I believe that if there is one, it is a cruel and malevolent creature. All I want is peace. An end. At the very least, I want companionship to help me through these ordeals. Alice! I shout once more to the ocean. Just like the whale before it, it does not assist me. Chapter 3. Alice and the Whale. What does the ocean provide to those who seek answers? A coddling splash of repetition. A lull that mimics a lullaby. Wordless, aimless, and in the absence of the sun, haunting. An ocean provides a reflection of what you are, though never true. Always in constant motion, never still. Like a distorted mirror, it hides its own secrets. It uses light to hide the vastness beneath it. The endlessly dark places, the solitude and the horrors. The ocean is much like the world itself. They are both endlessly beautiful. Yet given the chance, and they will steal you away to the dark places without a hint of a warning. What does God provide to those that seek answers? Silence. Self-reflection and time spent lost in the labyrinthine mind rife with traps of doubt and fear. Faith, to those who have it, is like a mother singing a lullaby to a child. Wordful, meaningful, and in the absence of the sun, comforting. Faith can provide you with a reflection of who you think you are, however stiff and unmoving. Like a true mirror, it hides its own secrets. It uses oneself to hide the vastness beneath it, the endlessly dark places, the solitude and the horrors. Faith, or lack of, is much like the world itself, both endlessly beautiful, yet given the chance, and they will steal you away to their dark places without a hint of a warning. What does death provide to those that seek answers? Only unanswerable questions. Fear, finality, and an ending that is unknown. Unknown thoughts. Death is what death is. That is the only fact. Alice awakes upon the small boat that struck her. She places a paw to her head and rubs at a spot that was slightly indented. She carefully works out the indentation with both of her paws and sits down against the wooden floor of the small ship. She brings her paws together as a small trickle of water emerges from her fabric. "Oliver?" Alice whispers as she turns her attention to the brilliantly shining endless blue surface of the churning ocean. She lets out a heavy sigh. For as far as she could see, there was neither any sign of Oliver nor the remnants of the house. She searches through the meager contents of the boat. She finds a few empty unlabeled tins that are old and covered with rust from the sea air. A single oar rests upon the back of the vessel, sun-bleached and cracked in parts, but still looks to be very usable. "Well, there's some hope in all this," Alice speaks as she stands on unsteady feet against the constant rise and fall beneath her. She gets her bearings and retrieves the large oar in her meager paws. She now has a way to travel. However, she has no direction. The sun is perfectly overhead, giving no clues as to which direction is which. Oar in hands, Alice takes a few steps forward and feels something beneath her foot. The small object makes a slight jingle noise that sounds somewhat familiar. Mesmerized by the object, Alice lets the oar fall to the ship floor with a loud thud. She reaches down and picks up a blue collar with an old gold bell that has been so worn it is showing the spots of gray metal beneath the layer of metallic paint. Alice's green eyes narrow as she places the collar around her neck. She toys with the bell for a few minutes as a group of tears begin to stream down from her eyes. Rewind. I remember well what it felt like to be alone. Truly alone. I was young when I had kittens. I cared for them the best I could. I knew no other way to do things. I lived behind a fast food chain in a parking lot. I knew no better life. People came. I trusted them once. Even though I was discarded, I still trusted. I remembered life with a home, warm nights when it was cold outside, and cold nights when it was warm outside. Meals provided, not scavenged. I remembered love and being loved. People came. They took all of my kittens. I waited. I knew that my kittens were headed to places that I had been, or at least, at best, I hoped. I waited longer, thinking they would come for me. They did not come for me. Oliver and Olivia came for me, or I came to them. I do not know how it works exactly. They took me from that parking lot and brought me back into the life of people. I found a warm place, food whenever I was hungry, water whenever I thirsted. I found unbounded joy. I pounced upon toys and ran back and forth throughout the days and nights. I found cardboard boxes to hide in, comfortable laps to sit upon for hours. There was always a soft place to sleep, usually next to Oliver or Olivia's head. I was treated as precious as sunlight itself, a home where there was always a kind hand to rub my head. I would oft look out the windows and see the old world, the world I used to live. Though it still held so much allure with its birds and flying bugs, I never forgot the loneliness I felt. I was content to watch. I had found and come to know very well a better life. I was never lonely here. The years passed by. They were happy years. When Olivia was nearly 30, I woke up one morning and I could not move. There was pain, unbearable pain. All I could do was cry out. Oliver found me and wrapped me in a warm blanket. I scratched him on accident because I hurt so much. I did not mean to. Time seemed to go on forever, until I found myself somewhere unfamiliar. It was all right. Olivia and Oliver were there. They cried, and I could do nothing to cheer them up. I felt a sharp needle-like pain in my back, and I scratched Olivia. I did not mean to. I was just in too much pain. The pain subsided as my life ended. However, I was not alone. I was warm. I was loved. My trust in people was not misplaced. I never left their hearts. Soon after, Olivia found the other me, the one that was not alive. I am an object of grief. I regret that I could not be there when Olivia left this world. I wish I had more time to sit in their laps, to feel their warm hands against my fur, to press my head against theirs. My time was always going to be shorter than theirs was. They, just as I, assumed that it would be longer. From what I gather, everyone on this earth just wishes his or her time were longer. I am thankful for the life I was given. I may or may not be real right now, but if I can help Oliver, then I must. He has never forgiven himself for allowing me to leave. He still feels that he could have done more. Forward. Alice wipes away the tears from her eyes as she removes her hand from the familiar bell. She scans the horizon for any sign or reason to head in any direction. Upon the bright sky, she can make out small forms coming towards her. Unrecognizable at first. Soon she makes out the forms of white birds. She takes the heavy oar back into her paws and places it in the rolling water. The white birds close the distance as she eyes them curiously. One of the large birds swoops down and rips at her fabric, right at the top of her shoulder, revealing a strange yellow glow beneath it. She mews out in pain as her eyes narrow into small slits as she takes the oar in hand. A trio of white birds circles overhead. As one begins its descent, Alice grips the oar tightly in her paws. The bird lets out a cry as it nears Alice. She takes careful aim, and with all of her might she knocks the bird into the sea. Lifeless, the broken body of the bird floats upon the surface of the water. The other birds take notice and leave as a giant spray of water fills the air. Their quarry is willing and able to put up a fight. "What now?" Alice mutters as she spots the huge whale beside the boat. She raises her oar high above her ears and makes a threatening motion towards the whale, a somewhat futile gesture given the whale's enormous size compared to the boat's somewhat pitiful dimensions. "You do not frighten me, fish." As the giant whale, with its scarred, wet flesh and huge bulk, places itself beside the boat, Alice meets eyes with the tremendous creature. "Olivia?" Alice speaks as she lowers the oar from above her head. That giant eye. She has seen eyes like that before. This odd feeling of home, of love and belonging welling up within her. Alice has known it well before. The whale emits a low, trembling tone in reply. "I need to find Oliver. He needs my help. Can you take me to him?" The whale disappears beneath the surface of the sparkling ocean. Moments later, Alice can feel the boat moving forward. She drops the oar to the ground as she climbs to the back of the boat and watches as the whale propels her forward with the top of its head. "Thank you, Olivia," Alice says as she places a paw against the head of the creature. Alice sits down against the rough surface of the weather-worn boat. She places her hand to the collar around her neck. She begins to wonder, is she the real Alice? She has had so many conversations with Oliver back at the house regarding both religion and what comes after death. She had assumed, as he did, that she was just a figment of his grief. After all, she was just an object created out of grief, was she not? The more she thought about it, the more she could not bring herself to believe that things were so simple. After all, she had memories. Real memories that Oliver had never told her about. A life of loneliness, finding a warm home, and pain. All those feelings were as real. She had never given the possibility any deep or meaningful thought. Ever since that day that Oliver fell so deeply into despair that she came to life in some manner. Then again, nothing was completely impossible, especially given the current circumstances. All of these new thoughts awoke something deep within Alice. Was I created by grief? Or a god that Oliver was so angry with? Either way, for what purpose was I created? Who am I to anyone? Every time Oliver had asked Alice about what came after, she remembers that she always said that she had theories. This reality, if it could even be called that by any stretch of imagination, was not what she had in mind. Though she had no reservations about being alive, she had somehow hoped for more. This hope left her feeling rather disappointed. In all honesty, she wanted nothing more than for things to be just as they were. At the least, she had expected something more. She could not define it any further, just more. Chapter 4. Ashore. From deep within the machine of the world, the gears of time turn ever onward, the serpentine belt of fate pulling us always forward, as we leave behind only memories. Like grains of sand, each memory shall be claimed by the great creator and destroyer named Time, washed away in the endless ocean of its vastness. Though fragile as thin glass, a memory can survive. When we think not upon it or believe it is gone to us entirely, it has the most inherent ability to surprise us by simply continuing to exist. A small stretch of sand. After all that time spent floating adrift, my skin torn from my body, and my encounter with the strange whale that had Olivia's eyes, I finally come to land, and it is nothing but a small plot of plain yellow-tinted sand, half the size of a school-ground baseball field. I watch as the piece of roof from my old house sticks straight up into the air and disappears beneath the surface of the ocean. I'm not sure why. At this point, however, I am not surprised. Remarkable in the way it is completely and utterly unremarkable, the island is devoid of trees, seagrass, or any semblance of life. Chapter 5. Nascent. Nascent. Adjective. Just coming into existence and beginning to display signs of future potential. The world slowly comes into view. A woman stands above me. She lifts me up to her. I stare into her eyes. For a moment they flash blue. My mind wonders if it is Olivia. It does not look to be her. I see instead that she has light brown eyes. "Morning, you," she says as she draws me close to her. I do not want to be here. I do not want to go through this. Not again. I cannot do this. I will not do this. I try to scream. Instead, I make an unintelligible babble. My arms and legs flail around as I am pulled from the crib. "Don't fuss now," the woman says as she gently attempts to rock me back and forth. Everything will be all right. Everything will definitely not be all right. Not in the least. This is not the ending that I wanted. I wanted nothing. I just wanted everything to be finished. I cannot go through this again. Not with all the pain and loss. I begin to cry. One thing that I can still do in this new form. I will not bear the thought of finding love again and losing it. I will not lose the people I love again. Why is this happening to me? Have I not endured enough? Don't cry, little one. See who's here, the woman says as I am taken into the arms of a young girl. Meet your older sister, Alice. Who am I to you? A voice resonates in my head as I stare into a pair of gem-like green eyes and a smiling, very young face that has a strange familiarity to it. Alice, I think to myself, as all of my old memories slowly begin to fall away, like grains of sand washed out into an ocean. One by one, my old life fades away. I am not alone. Everything will be all right. Who am I to you? Cat, companion, sister, and friend. Everything. Everything. God? The last of my old life washed away. The sun shines anew against eyes that have never witnessed such profound beauty. The world, humanity, dreams, they are all so beautiful and new. An endless expanse of possibilities exist. My hatred for time abates.